Hi, my name is Christopher Penn, Chief Data Scientist and co-founder of TrustInsights.ai, and this is Fundamentals of Marketing Analytics for ContentTech Summit. So, what are we talking about? What kind of problems are we trying to address here when we talk about marketing analytics and content marketing analytics in specific? In the 2019 CMO survey, which is a survey run by Duke University asking hundreds of CMOs what their top challenges are, when asked what is the most challenging thing that you face in marketing and implementing marketing on a regular basis, the number one thing, by not a small margin, was demonstrating the impact of marketing in terms of financial outcomes. Show me the money. That's what the C-suite needs to be able to prove when we're talking about marketing. How well do we do at that? In that same CMO survey, 2 years later, only less than half of CMOs can prove the impact of marketing budget spend quantitatively. More than a third, 38%, say they have a qualitative sense, which is kind of like saying they're guessing, and 13% say they have no idea, right? This is not a good place to be. Right? This is an uncomfortable place to be. Why? Because the other part of the C-suite, the CEO's office, wants some things from us. In the 2019 Price Waterhouse CEO survey, we see two yellow lines here. The upper yellow line are things that CEOs rate as critical or important to the business, and the lower yellow line are things that how well CEOs are getting that information. First thing up, data about your customers and clients' preferences and needs. 94% of CEOs say that's critical, but they're only 15% say they're getting what they want. That's a really big gap, right? It's a really uncomfortable gap, and they just keep going across the board here. Brand and reputation. 90% say it's critical. 24% say they're getting it. This is not good, right? The C-suite, the corner office says, I want to know more about what's working, and nobody is delivering. When we asked again, when the CMO survey asked again, how well is marketing improving? How has been marketing doing at marketing excellence, at proving that we're doing a good job at marketing? It's been flat for 6 years, right? Really uncomfortable. And yet, when those same CMOs are asked, what contribution does analytics make to company performance, right? It's more than social media. It's more than mobile marketing. Now, here's a question. In terms of your own marketing budget, how much money do you spend on social media, paid or organic? How much money do you spend on mobile marketing? How much money do you spend on analytics? We are dramatically underinvesting in analytics. And what happens when we do this, when we don't spend money on knowing what's working and proving the value of what we're doing, and the corner office is asking us for more and more and better data? This is what happens, right? Kind of a bad situation to be in. If we dig into the impact of what happens if we don't fix this problem, right? What happened at the beginning of the pandemic? Marketing took a big haircut, right? Look at this budget number. Minus 3.9% decrease in overall marketing budgets in February of 2021, down from basically going flat in terms of expenditures in June, and from 5.8% increases the year before. Marketing took a haircut at the beginning of the pandemic, and we saw substantial budget cutbacks, and we're still working our way through those. I know your organization is, my organization is, everybody is trying to figure out what we should be doing. Why did marketing take such a bath at the beginning of the pandemic? Because we can't prove the value of what we're doing. So how do we do this? How do we solve this problem of, frankly, not being able to prove the value of what we do? We have to pivot away from the way we've been doing our marketing. Just create content and hope that it does well and not measure it. We have to change and become data-driven. Now, what does it mean to become data-driven? If you think about data-driven in the context of, like, say, your car's GPS, it doesn't mean you just totally give up control and you just get in the car and hope that it takes you somewhere, right? That's not what that means. And a lot of people have this hesitation when it comes to talking of being data-driven, that they're like, oh, no, I don't want to give everything over to the machines. Like, no, you don't have to do that. You're data-driven all the time. When you use GPS, you put in the destination. You know where you want to go. And then the software provides you data and information and guidance and insights to help you get there as best as possible. That means you make decisions with data. You make decisions with data first. That's what data-driven means. As opposed to making decisions with instinct, with going with your guts, or the very worst slogan that I hear all the time in conference rooms that makes me cringe. Well, that's the way we've always done it. It's not a good solution. So make decisions with data. Now, let me show you an example of how sometimes our intuition can mislead us. What direction do you go to get from Reno to San Diego? What direction do you go? Our intuition, our gut, our memory says, oh, well, Nevada is east of California, so you must go southwest. Reality, the data is that Reno is on the very far western edge of Nevada, and California curves inwards as you go down the coast. So you're actually going southeast. That's an example of intuition says one thing, but the data shows us something else. And if you were to try and blindly just chart a course based on your intuition, you'd end up in the ocean, as opposed to going where you want to go, going to San Diego. So that's what it means to be data-driven, and we have to make that pivot to say, okay, we're going to use data to make decisions. We're going to use data to make decisions. So how do we do this? How do we start this journey? Well, the first thing we got to do is we've got to set some goals, right? And goals are pretty straightforward. They're the things that we want to accomplish. There's 3 levels of goals in your organization. And we've got to be clear when it comes to our content marketing, how are we serving each of these goals? The first are organizational goals. Why are we doing this thing at all? Why are we doing marketing at all? Right? What is the big number that we're trying to get to, the big end state that we're after? Then you have campaign goals. So that are tactical. What are we doing? What are we trying to do? If our goal is $100,000 of revenue, what do we have to do to get to that? Do we have to get 100 sales, 10 sales, 1,000 sales? What do we have to do? And then our third set of goals, really that very specific implementation. How do we do the thing? How do we reach this? If our goal, our campaign goal is 100 sales leads, how do we do that? How do we break that down? There are so many great tools and things out there that can help us do this, but we have to be clear about these goals first. Remember, this is fundamentals. Explain why you're doing the thing, what are you doing, and how are you going to do the thing. And from there, we can start to set things like goal values. There's a really big gap between content, which is the stuff that we make, and cash, which is what this corner office, and the CFO in particular, would like to see us generate. How do we bridge that huge chasm between content and cash? What we've got to do is take a hard look at the processes we've set up and see how that bridges. I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. At the top of this sort of chart, you see the thing that the CFO and the CEO want. They want the cash. Show me the money, revenue, right? At the bottom are all the things that we use to attract audiences, content, right? So how do we bridge this gap? How do we get from the bottom to the top, from content to cash? One of the tools that content marketers love to use, and rightfully so, because it's one of the single best tools available to you, is Google Analytics. Here's the challenge, though. Google Analytics only takes you part of the way through this journey, right? When we look at these different KPIs, revenue, closed won deals, open deals, sales opportunities, qualified leads, prospects, audiences, Google Analytics only really covers the bottom 3, right? It can measure your audience for sure. It can measure people who become prospects, signing up for a newsletter. It can even measure marketing qualified leads, like when somebody fills out a contact me form or requests a demo or takes a tour, or put something in their shopping cart. But Google Analytics, other than for e-commerce, really can't do much beyond that point. With e-commerce, it can actually go all the way to the end of the journey. But for everything else, you have to turn over to marketing automation systems, CRMs, maybe even accounting software or ERP software to figure out the end state, that end goal, going from that content to that cash. So how do we use Google Analytics then to connect to business value if it can only measure part of this buyer's journey? Well, the good news is that as long as we have the information, we can infer the values of each of these KPIs and start to assign dollar values to them. So let's look at what an example of that might look like. Suppose you have a goal of $100,000 in revenue. And to get to that, you need to sell 100 things, right? $1,000 each, 100 things. You would see that in your CRM software. There's my 100 sales. Well, how many sales does it take? How many deals does it take to get to 100 sales? Maybe your salespeople are really good. 50% of the time, they can close a deal. Great. Okay, so you need 200 deals then to close 100 sales. And maybe your qualification team, your business development team, maybe they're not as good as the sales team, right? And they need, I have a 25% close rate. They need 4 opportunities to close 1 deal. So you need 800 opportunities, right? And maybe your interface between marketing and sales is pretty good, and you convert 1 out of every 2 sales qualified leads to an actual opportunity. Might be a bit optimistic there. You would need 1,600 sales qualified leads, and so on and so forth. To maybe your marketing qualified leads, some are good, some are not. Every now and again, you get that person puts test at test.com in there in the demo form, and so you need 3,200 marketing qualified leads. Maybe your email list is great, but there's not a ton of qualified buyers. Only 10% of the people on your email list are qualified buyers. So in order to get to 3,200 marketing qualified leads, you would need 32,000 prospects, people on your email list, or who just want to stay in touch with you. And suppose your website, good design, clear value proposition, great content, right? This is content marketing. Maybe it can convert 10% of your audience into prospects, in which case you would need 320,000 visitors to get eventually to 100 sales. Now that's a pretty long chain of evidence, but you can see there's a logic to it. If you can put this data in, you can figure out, okay, what do I need to get to my end state? And then you can assign dollar values to it, right? If accounting says you need $100,000 of revenue, if you make 100 sales at $1,000 a sale, you get to the 100,000. Well, if you only close 1 out of 2 deals, then each deal is effectively only worth $500, right? Because for every 1 deal you win, you lose 1. And your opportunities, for every 1 you win, you lose 4, right? So an opportunity is worth $125. Keep going down. Sales qualified leads, $62. Marketing qualified leads, $31. Prospects, $3.13. And audience, 31 cents. Every visitor to your website would be worth 31 cents if your revenue is $100,000 and you've got this sort of layout. Well, what does this mean? Why are we walking through such a long exercise? In software like Google Analytics, you can track audience, you can track prospects, you can track marketing qualified leads. And again, for e-commerce, you can go all the way through. But if you can't go all the way through, if your visibility stops somewhere along this range, then find the dollar value of the last place that you can track in Google Analytics, which for a lot of us is going to be marketing qualified leads right here. And when someone becomes a marketing qualified lead, you can then assign a dollar value, an inferred value in Google Analytics in your goal of whatever that number is. In this case, it'd be $31. And maybe you have a website or a system that's really complex or confusing, or maybe most of your marketing qualified leads come from offline. If that's the case, you might have to revert down to saying like a newsletter subscriber will be worth $3.13. Right? You could assign a value to that. And by going through this logic, you can then configure the application, the software, to be able to say, okay, now I want to be able to do financial forecasting. If I'm getting X number of prospects today, and I know each prospect's worth $3.13. I got 100 prospects yesterday, right? Then you can say, I can forecast that in however long your sales cycle is, this will be worth $313. 100 prospects down the road, right? That's the power of setting good goal values. It makes our marketing software that measures our content marketing much more impactful, because when you then go into Google Analytics, you can actually see, okay, what is the dollar value of my content? What is the page value of my content? In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's show an example here. If I go into my Google Analytics and I go down into behavior for my website, and go to a site content and look at all my pages here, I can start to get a sense of, because I've put in those dollar values into Google Analytics for goal completion, I can see what is the value of any given page on my website, right? And I can see if certain pages, worth $1 even, some pages, worth 5 cents, things like that. But I can now start to measure my content marketing by dollar value if I've put goals and goal values in my Google Analytics. So it's a really powerful tool that you can use as long as you've configured it correctly to get a sense of what is your content worth? What kind of money can your content generate? How does it help create value for your company? So it's really important. So it's an important first step. Okay, so we talked about this process. So how do we identify what our KPIs are? Well, unsurprisingly, the process looks very similar. What is a KPI? A KPI, it stands for Key Performance Indicator, right? We all know that. But really, a KPI is the answer to the question of what metric that you measure determines your bonus, right? Or maybe not so positively. What number, if it goes badly, is going to get you fired? What number is that? That's a KPI. It's a number that's so important that your performance as a professional is evaluated on that number. If we go back to that chart that we were just talking about, revenue, closed won deals and stuff, the question is who's responsible for that number, right? Who's on their year-end review? Where does open deals show up? Where does closed won deals show up? Certainly the head of sales is going to be evaluated on how many deals did your sales team close this year. The CFO is going to be evaluated on how much revenue, or the CRO is going to be evaluated on how much revenue. Someone who's maybe heading up marketing, they're going to be evaluated at the end of the year in their review on sales qualified leads. Hey, how did marketing do at generating sales qualified leads? So a big part of goals and goal values and goal setting is understanding what our KPIs are and being able to zero in on those when it comes to reporting. When you think about it, a lot of people have all these crazy dashboards, right? Yeah, buttons and knobs and dials and speedometers and blinking lights and stuff. It looks like Darth Vader's restroom. You don't need all that. All you need to be focused, to stay focused, to understand what you're going to get your bonus for is 1, 2, maybe 3 pieces of information on a dashboard, and that's it. You don't need a whole lot else in order to make your reporting effective, to make your content marketing analytics effective. So keep that in mind. Now, in terms of analytics, we have this thing called an analytics marketing maturity model. And what we want to understand is, of the tools that we're using to measure our content marketing, where do they fall in the bucket of, and how do we use them to help improve the ROI of our content marketing? This is the model, from the very bottom, the basics to the most advanced stuff. So let's walk through this model and what it means. The first ladder on the hierarchy of analytics, if you will, is descriptive analytics. What happened? This is stuff like Google Analytics, like your email marketing software, like your blog reporting software. It just answers the question, what happened? We look at the data and we can explain to people what happened. Web traffic was up or down. One of the things that people do most wrong with descriptive analytics is they just throw out data like this. Avinash Kasha calls it data puking. Like, here's a whole bunch of data. This doesn't help anybody. One of the things we need to be able to do is explain the data and give it context, give it some meaning, to be able to say, yes, users, 4,000 users this week. Yes, so what? Is it good? Is that bad? I don't know. If I say 4,000 users, an improvement of 14% over last week, you go, that's good. I like improvements. Or we're down 6%. Uh-oh. Well, what are we going to do about it? Right? What happened? But we have to be able to provide that context. And that's where a lot of people go wrong with descriptive analytics. Is they just throw the numbers out there. No context, no comparison, no contrast to the numbers that have gone before. So if you want to make your marketing analytics immediately better, start providing some kind of contrast to set context for your audience. The second rung on the ladder is diagnostic. Why did something happen, right? Why did we see this this change in our email marketing performance? Right? Why did people stop filling out forms on our website? One of the things that again, people get most wrong here is that descriptive tools like Google Analytics, they're fantastic. I love them. They cannot answer why. They can't crawl inside somebody's head and say, why did you do that thing? Why did you make that decision? Why did you abandon your shopping cart? The only way you get that is by talking to people, right? Whether it is through things like surveys or things like, discussion groups. If you want to see a really good example of a discussion group that helps answer questions and gives context, go to the Content Marketing Institute's CM World Slack. It's a fantastic group. And they get a chance to talk to their audience all the time and listen as people explain not only what they're doing, but why they're doing it. It's a really good example. We have another one. Trust Insights has the Analytics for Marketers Slack. If you go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, same idea. Just having a conversation with people, asking them why are you making certain decisions so that you can get that context, get that explanation directly from the consumer. There's no substitute for it. There's no substitute, and there's no way to use, as much as I love it, there's no way to use machine learning and AI to dig around in someone's head. Not yet. Right, so you've got to ask people why. The next step on the ladder is predictive. What's going to happen? This is forecasting, using forecasting tools and technologies to try and understand what's likely to happen based on the data you already have. An example of a content marketing forecast here, where we can take a look at all of our search terms and using historical data, be able to forecast forward what's going to happen. When is the audience likely to be searching for a certain specific type of term? And then we can use that to take action, to say, okay, well, if I know that business analytics course is going to be the most popular term next week, I can tell my ad agency, hey, increase my bid prices on my pay-per-click keywords for business analytics course 20% next week, and it's for 1 week only. And then the following week, maybe data analytics course is the most popular term, and say to my agency, okay, we want to increase the bid price for that, and turn down business analytics course the week after. I can communicate with my social media team and say, hey, I need 4 posts about business analytics for next week so that we're hitting people with the right message at the right time. I can even create content marketing calendars, using some of these forecasting tools to say, these are the things I need to be writing content for now so that in 4 weeks, when it becomes the most popular term, I'm ready to go. I've gotten all the pieces together. So that's the third layer of this hierarchy of analytics when it comes to the fundamentals. What's going to happen? How can we forecast that using statistical tools to know when we need to be in market? Everything works better this way. Now, there are some limitations. You obviously can't forecast things that have never happened, like presidential elections or pandemics. Right? There are limitations, but in general, particularly for larger enterprises and such, there's a lot of predictability. There's a lot of things we can forecast. The fourth step on our ladder is prescriptive analytics. What should we do? And this is where things like attribution models really come into play, multi-touch attribution models, I should say, because things like last touch models are of limited use most of the time. Let me show you an example of an attribution model. This is, again, from my company. This was our attribution model year to date. And those 2 bright red bars up top are email marketing newsletters. That greenish bar is Google organic search. The purple bars are social media. When you have a good attribution model, and it comes to content marketing analytics, I can look at this and say, what channels are working well for me? If I am, I see Facebook here as number 7 on the list, responsible for about 3% of conversions. Now, if 3% of my budget is being spent on Facebook, great. I know that what we're doing is working. I can decide what should I do. I'll keep my spend at that level. But if I'm spending 50% of my budget on Facebook and I'm getting 3% of my results, time to turn that dial down and do something else. In this case, I've got 30, 40, 54%, 55% of my conversions are coming from email marketing. Is 55% of my time and my energy and my money going to email marketing? No, probably 5, maybe 10% of my time is going to email marketing, but it's delivering 55% of my results. This is a clear indicator I need to be improving my content marketing in email and delivering even more value, doubling down on what works, and maybe even switch some of my advertising tactics away from whatever else it is we're doing and say, let's grow our email list, right? Prescriptive analytics tells us what to do. What should we do based on what's working? I can see I need to invest more time in email, and I probably should invest more time in organic search, right? It should be a bigger driver than it is. Prescriptive analytics also tells us other things like where do individual channels fit inside of the customer journey, the buyer's journey in particular. Here we see those big red dots sort of in the middle of the journey. They're nurturing people along. That tells me from a content perspective, gosh, I should be, my messaging should be get to know us more, take some free courses, read this blog post, driving people to our content, the content that nurtures them, because it's in the middle of the journey. It's not content, at least in email, where people are just getting the email for the first time going, who is this? Why am I getting an email from this person? Nope. It is very much that nurturing along. And then towards the back of the journey, we see some additional email stuff. We see some things like Slack in there. That tells me I can be more sales focused or more conversion focused in our Slack channels, because it's at the end of the journey. People know who we are. They don't need an introduction. They may not even need nurturing. They may just need a call to action. So my content marketing that I do in my Slack group should be, from a messaging perspective, different than what's in my email. And that in turn should be different from what's in my pay-per-click ads. My pay-per-click ads are at the very beginning of the journey. I can see here, gosh, I clearly need to be more introduction-based and maybe not try and sell somebody something in pay-per-click. Maybe I really should pivot to that sign up for my newsletter conversion as a way to grow the value of what we're doing. We can even use these machine learning techniques, because this is all powered by machine learning and AI, to evaluate the value of our content itself in terms of its ability to nudge somebody towards conversion. When you take all your data out of Google Analytics and put it into more advanced software, you can understand, okay, what content pushes people over the edge into converting? Is it certain blog posts? Is it certain podcasts? Is it certain, whatever it is that's on your site or something you can measure with your Google Analytics account? You can chart that out and go, this is what's really working. I need to direct people to these resources because they have a propensity to convert that's higher than normal. For example, I see on here my modern SEO paper was responsible for 47% of conversions. It nudged people along, was part of 47% of conversions. My Instagram paper, only 13%. Well, gosh, if I go into my email newsletter and I see, a whole thing on, promoting my Instagram paper, but it's not pushing the needle forward, right? It's not helping people convert. Maybe I need to rethink that. Maybe I need to change things up there and use content that nudges people more towards conversion. If you go on to, for example, the Trust Insights blog, at the bottom of every blog post, there's a whole thing that says, you might also be interested in. Where did those posts come from? It's not automatic. It comes from this. It comes from this analysis to say, okay, these are the things that I know nudge people towards conversion. Let's get people to those things so that we can see if they convert more. So that's prescriptive analytics. It's really powerful, and it's the higher up on the ladder, but it delivers a lot more value. And finally, at the pinnacle of the ladder is proactive analytics. This is where true AI is doing stuff for us. Right now, that's pretty limited. There's not a whole lot that's available in the market. There are some things, like, for example, in Google Analytics 4, it can tell you, hey, these are the things that you should be paying attention to. And there's some ad systems that can make decisions autonomously. But for the most part, we're still a little ways away from that. And that's okay, because I don't know that people are really comfortable turning over everything to machines just yet. But the key for you is to understand, where are you personally, professionally, in your own professional development? Where's your organization on the hierarchy of analytics, on this marketing analytics maturity model? Because understanding where you are helps you develop a plan for understanding where you need to be next, right? Everybody loves that cliche. We're going to take this to the next level. Well, here in this case is the literal next level. What is the literal next level for you? If you are in descriptive analytics, what will it take to help you graduate to diagnostic analytics? If you have gotten really good at focus groups and market research and one-on-ones and stuff, What will it take to help you graduate to predictive analytics? Use this to plot your personal, your professional, your organizational journey up this ladder of maturity, and know where it is that you can grow the most, right? Fundamentals of content marketing analytics begins at that bottom on the descriptive analytics, but there's a lot of room for growth. What do you need to succeed in analytics? You're going to need a few things. Number one, to succeed with content marketing analytics, you need good data, right? Good data is 6 things. It's clean, which means it's free of errors. It's complete. There's no missing information, which, by the way, is a lot harder than it sounds. If you've ever had the experience of you moved websites or you changed templates or you did a redesign and then you forgot to put your Google Analytics tracking tag on for 2 weeks and you're like, hey, where's all my data? It happens a lot. Your data has to be comprehensive. It has to be able to answer the questions that's being asked of it. Again, this sounds like it's simple, but it's not. If somebody says, what is the ROI of my content marketing? It's a big question to unpack because you've got to know what your investment is, right? The money you're spending on content marketing. Hard dollars like advertising. Soft dollars like your time as a professional that could have been used for something else. Even things like infrastructure dollars, like how much does it cost for internet access in the building you sit in and the desk you're at. That all contributes to the investment part of ROI. And then what's the return? How much money did your content earn? Right? You have to use, again, attribution analysis to understand that, and the goal values we talked about early on to try and understand what the return was on your investment. And so if you don't have that data, it's not easily available, you can't answer the question of what is the ROI of our content marketing. Fourth, our data has to be chosen well, which means we got to get rid of all the irrelevant stuff. Right? There's a ton of irrelevant data that we're dealing with all the time. We need to be able to weed that out. Fifth, our data has to be credible. It has to be collected in a valid way. This is especially true of diagnostic analytics, where we are trying to understand why something happened. Real simple example. If you were to send out a survey about your company and say, hey, Acme Motor Corporation, we'll make it up. How much do you like Acme Motors cars? They're great, they're really great, or they're amazing. Right? That's not a credible survey, but yet so many people do that. And if you don't have credible data, you can't make good decisions from it. And sixth, your content has to be calculable. It has to be something that you can work with, and it has to be something that the machines that you're feeding it have to be able to work with as well. So that's one of the things you need to succeed with analytics. Second thing, and we've talked about this already to some degree, is that we've got to get out of the habit of just gathering data to gather data, right? The whole, back the truck up and pour data on our desk, or do that to your boss, as a way to, I guess, avoid doing analysis. That doesn't help anybody. If you take nothing else away from this time we have together, it is take this away. Data without decisions are distractions, right? Data without decisions are distraction. You've got to use your data. If you don't use your data, it's not doing you any good. It's just, frankly, it's costing you money. And again, be really clear about the data that you need to make decisions. One of my favorite examples of relevant versus irrelevant data is CVS, which, for those of you outside the United States, is a pharmaceuticals drugstore chain. And CVS is known for one thing. It is known for really long receipts. This is a receipt I got recently for buying some stuff there. You can see the top part that I cut off is the relevant portion of the receipt. The bottom part is all the other stuff that they append to it. And when it comes to marketing analytics, we do this a lot, right? Again, we make those crazy dashboards that look cool, but don't deliver any value because we put so much of that extra stuff that doesn't need to be there, when it could fit in that little tiny slip of paper. When you are presenting your marketing analytics, when you are explaining it to people, when you are talking to people or writing reports, if you don't have anything better, use what we call the SAINT framework. The SAINT framework is 5 steps: summary, analysis, insights, next steps, and timeline. The summary is really simple. If the person you're giving this report reads nothing else but that first page, it's a condensed version of the report. Second section of the report, the analysis. What happened, right? That is descriptive analytics. third section, the insights. Why did those things happen? Right? That is, of course, diagnostic analytics. The fourth section of your report, the next steps. What are you going to do about it? Right? Prescriptive analytics. What actions are you going to take? More importantly, when you're handing somebody a report, what decisions do you need them to make? I need you to make a decision about the ad budget. I need you to make a decision about choosing this channel or this channel. I need to make a decision about who to keep on staff. Right? Be very clear what your next steps are and the time frame that you're going to need those actions to occur in. If you create your marketing analytics reports like this, following this format, they'll be instantly more valuable because instead of spending all your time on what happened, you spend 25% of your time on what happened, 25% of your time maybe on why, and 50% of your time on here's what we need to do. Here's what we need to create, the content we need to create, the budget we need, and then you get the approvals from the person. That's how you make your marketing analytics reporting really valuable. So, what's the future of content marketing analytics? Where's all this going? Well, you know where it's going. It's going up the ladder. Now, the question is, where are you on the ladder? And what will you do to create even more value at every step along the way? If you've got questions about what you've seen in this talk, we're going to have the live Q&A. But also, feel free to just reach out, right? There's my email address, where I am on most social platforms. Again, if you want to join the free Slack groups, the CMI Slack is a great one to be in. I'm there almost every day. The Trust Insights Slack, trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. Also a good one there. I'm there every day. Love to answer your questions and see how you can make more out of your content marketing analytics. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Need help making your marketing platforms, processes, and people work smarter? Visit trustinsights.ai today and learn how we can help you deliver more impact.